Hello and welcome back, future scientists. I'm Mr. K with Mississippi Public Broadcasting, and we're continuing our lesson today on genetics. Now, unfortunately, what we're talking about today is where it starts to get confusing because we're leaving those simple Mendelian inheritance patterns behind, and we're getting into new inheritance patterns. So some of the rules and laws that we've been following are going to change up today, but just hang in there with me. I'm going to clear it up, and you're going to know exactly what's going on, okay? So let's go ahead and hop into it and see what we're talking about today. So we're learning two new types of inheritance patterns today. It's called incomplete dominance and codominance, okay? That's what we're talking about today, and I'm going to tell you how it's similar and different to what we've learned in the past. So again, everything we've been talking about up to this point, when you're just dealing with two alleles and one is dominant and one is recessive, that's called Mendelian inheritance, okay? That's what he was really studying with those pea plants. But unfortunately, that's more rare than what we're talking about today, these more complex forms of inheritance. These are the more common ones. So in a certain sense, Mendel picked the perfect thing to study in those pea plants because a lot of the traits, like for animals and humans, are a lot more complex than that. Okay, so Mendel was fortunate because the traits he selected in pea plants were clearly distinguishable, with one allele dominating the other, making phenotypes easy to observe. However, in some cases, in most cases I would say, phenotypes are not as evidence and it can be more challenging to distinguish. So here's one of these new types of inheritance patterns. It's called incomplete dominance. Okay, in incomplete dominance, what's going on here is that the dominant allele is not totally dominant over the recessive allele. And so what that means is it doesn't mask it 100%. An example of this is snapdragon flowers. Okay, in that top right corner, those are snapdragon flowers. And you can see that they come in a lot of different colors. And the reason for this is that the color of these flowers are in a form of inheritance called incomplete dominance. What's going on here is that if you crossed a red snapdragon flower, which we would designate as being homozygous dominant, with a white snapdragon flower, which we'll designate as being homozygous recessive, when you make that cross, you're going to get a lot of heterozygous individuals, which means they're going to have one capital letter and one lowercase letter. But what happens here is that the colors are going to mix instead of the red overpowering the white one entirely. So the red, because this pink flower has a capital letter and a lowercase letter, the capital letter is for red, the lowercase letter is for white, they're going to mix together, and in those heterozygous individuals, they're going to be pink. So genes show incomplete dominance when the heterozygous phenotype is intermediate or in the middle of. Here's my little quick and easy way to remember this. In incomplete dominance, the heterozygous shows a mix. In incomplete dominance, the heterozygotes show a mix. Now the word mix has a letter I in it, and incomplete dominance has a little letter I in it, okay? So just remember that as we're going forward, and I'll give you some more examples and some easy ways to remember this stuff. So let's kind of take another look at this. So this says when the F1 generation, all pink flowers, so we're over here on the left in that bottom row, okay? So what's happening here, these are all pink flowers, okay? Because they're pink, we know that they're heterozygous. And heterozygous here means they have one trait for being red and one trait for being white. The red can't totally overpower that white, so they mix together, okay? When this happens, when the F1 generation, all pink flowers, self-pollinates, in the F2 generation typically exhibits a 1 to 2 to 1 ratio of red, pink, and white. So look what happens here. When we mix these two pink flowers, our results are 1 red, 2 pink, and 1 white. And again, that's because this dominant allele is not totally dominant. It's a little stronger, but not totally. So when you have 2 for the red allele, you'll be a red flower. If you have 1 for red and 1 for white, you'll be pink, like these two in the middle. And then if you have 2 of the recessive alleles, that's when you'll have a white flower. Okay, to me, what I want you to remember, incomplete is a mix. We're mixing the colors together. Mix has the letter I in it, incomplete has the letter I in it. Okay, now we're going to contrast. This is a different form of inheritance. Okay, it's called codominance. In codominance, in this case, the heterozygous individuals display both phenotypes of two different homozygous phenotypes. So an example here is if you take a black chicken and cross it with a white chicken, this is how we would write their genotypes, big B, and big W. When you cross those two individuals together, all the offspring will appear checkered with both the black and the white. Okay, so here's the key difference in between codominance and incomplete dominance. When we're talking about incomplete dominance, like the flowers, the colors are mixing together. In codominance, you see both of them. These chickens, I know the picture might be a little small, hard to see, but these chickens are not gray. They are black and white. And so here's how I remember the difference in between them. Look at the word codominance. It has a letter O in it. Look at the word both. Both has the letter O in it. So if it's a codominant inheritance pattern, you see both phenotypes in the heterozygous. In an incomplete inheritance pattern, the phenotypes mix together. Okay, so that's the main difference. Codominance is both. Incomplete dominance is a mix. This type of chicken, they're very pretty chickens. They're called Andalusian blue, and they're very, sought after and pretty because of that checkered pattern, and it's a result of this particular type of inheritance called codominance. Okay, so that leads us to blood types. Human blood types are expressed as a dominant phenotype. So what's going on here is that your blood type is a result of codominance, okay? There's different alleles for your blood type. There's actually 3. You can have alleles that designate the type A blood, you can have an allele that designates the type B blood, or you can have the recessive allele, okay, which would, if you have 2 of them, would designate the type O blood. So look at our combinations over here. If you have type A blood, there are 2 types of genotypes that would code for this. You could be capital I, capital A, capital I, capital A, which would be, we would say that this is homozygous dominant, or you can have capital I, capital A, and then a little I, and this would be heterozygous for type A blood. Okay, so your blood type is a special example. It shows both codominance and multiple alleles. So it's kind of a 2-for-1 when it comes to special types of inheritance patterns. So y'all, I have some examples, some practice that we're going to do with this new types of inheritance patterns, incomplete versus codominance. So teacher, if you could, go ahead and pass that sheet out. Y'all take 5 or 10 minutes, work on it by yourself or with a partner, and then when you're ready for the review, come back to me and I'll do it up here on the board for everybody, okay? So go ahead, take some time, work on that on your own, and then when you're ready, unpause the video and come back to me and I'll review it on the board with y'all. All right, y'all, hopefully this didn't give y'all any problem, but just in case it did, I'm gonna review it with y'all. So let me get y'all's attention up here. Y'all feel free to change or add anything you don't have, and hopefully this will clear up any confusion that we might have. All right, so number 1 says, what type of inheritance do 2 alleles have if their traits mix? So this is kind of those key words that I want us to focus on. If traits are mixing, okay, this would be like a pink flower and a red flower, a red and a white coming together to make a pink. When the colors are mixing like that, that is an example of incomplete dominance. And my little cheat sheet, my little way to remember this, incomplete has a letter I in it and mix has a little letter I in it. So if they're mixing, it's incomplete dominance. Let's look at number 2. 2 says a roan cow shows both the traits for red and white fur. What kind of allele expression is this? So because this one says both, okay, this would mean a roan cow is both red and white. It's got red and white fur in it. Because it's saying both has a letter O in it, and codominance has a letter O in it. So I wanted to make sure I did those first, because if you don't know what type of inheritance you're looking at, you're going to get the questions wrong. So just try your best to remember this. If they're mixing, it's incomplete. If you see both of them, it's codominance. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into it and see if we can figure these out. Okay, so number 3 says a plant shows incomplete dominance in size. A tall plant, TT, is crossed with a medium plant, TS. What fraction of plants will also be tall? Okay, so what's going on here is we have a couple of different options, right? You can be tall, you can be small, you can be a short plant, or if you are heterozygous, you'll be there in the middle. They'll mix together. Okay, so it says what fraction of plants will also be tall. So let's do our crossover here. It's giving us what the genotypes of the parents are. Okay, and then I'll fill in my Punnett square. Okay. Okay, so this is telling us that 50% of these plants will be tall, these will both be tall, and these will be medium sized. Okay, if you got 2 S's, that's when you would be the short plant. Okay, all right, let's keep it going. For a red snapdragon flower breeds with a white snapdragon flower. The gene for petal color in these plants expresses incomplete dominance. What percentage of their offspring will have pink flowers? So here's what we're doing. We're going to take a red flower, we're going to take a white flower, and we're going to cross them. Okay? All right, it says what percentage will have pink flowers, which is the heterozygous. All of these are heterozygous, so that means this should be 100% are all going to be pink. Okay? Great job. Let's keep it going. All right, 5. This type of inheritance pattern shows both traits and heterozygous offspring. Which of these terms means you see both of them again? That's the codominance, okay? And I know I'm telling y'all that both, the word both and codominance both have the letter O in it, but co actually means two. Like that's what's going on. If you were co-presidents with somebody, that means you would both be presidents, right? Or co-captains means there's 2 captains. Well, what's going on here, because it's codominance, you're seeing both traits, right? So that's another way you can remember it. All right, so 6 says, a blue fish and a yellow fish mate and create a green fish. What inheritance pattern is this? Okay, so we're starting with blue and yellow, and then the offspring is green. Are we seeing both of those colors, or are the colors mixing together? Well, if you know anything about color theory, these are blue and yellow come together to make green, so they're mixing, so this is going to be incomplete dominance, okay? So we really need to know the difference in between incomplete and codominant. Let's keep it going. Here's 7. So 7 says, a black bear and a polar bear mate and create a panda bear. What would this be an example of? Okay, so we got a black bear that's totally black, we got a polar bear that's totally white, and we're creating a panda bear. Pandas are both black and white. So what type of inheritance pattern would that be? Well, because we're seeing both black and white, that's going to be codominant. Now, I did want to take a second and say this is not actually how it happens. Polar bears and black bears can't mate to make a panda bear. Pandas are actually closer to raccoons than they are to bears. And although a black bear and a polar bear can't mate, it has been seen that a polar bear and a grizzly bear can mate. But because in a panda bear we would see both black and white, that would be codominance for me. Okay, let's keep it going. 8 says, which of the following is a hybrid? All right, so we want to figure out what a hybrid means, okay? Just like a hybrid car uses both gas and electricity, a hybrid is going to have both examples of an allele. So I think letter B is what we want to go with here. All right, y'all, just a couple more. Thanks for hanging in there with me. Here's 9. 9 says, the hair form gene shows incomplete dominance. Straight hair, which is capital S, is dominant. Curly hair, which is lowercase s is recessive, and wavy hair is heterozygous. Mr. and Mrs. Calhoun both have wavy hair. What percentage of their children will also have wavy hair? Okay, so we've got 2 individuals with wavy hair, and wavy is the heterozygous. So dad is like this, and mom is like this, and our job is to cross them together and see what we're coming up with. So let me draw my Punnett square, and we'll fill this in. All right, this is big S, Okay? And it wants to know what percentage of their children will also have wavy hair. Well, remember that this is the wavy hair form. So how many of these are heterozygous? I see the 2 in the middle here are both heterozygous. So for this one, we want to go with 50% because 2 out of the 4 are showing the wavy hair. Okay? Let's keep it going. 10 says, some flowers are controlled by codominance. Red flowers, blue flowers, and speckled flowers. Cross a red flower with a speckled flower. What is the phenotypic ratio? Okay, let me erase some of this. Okay, so it says cross a red flower, this is red, with a speckled flower, this is speckled. Okay, and it wants to know what is the phenotypic ratio. So let's see. Okay. B. What is the phenotypic ratio? Okay, these 2 are both going to be red, and these 2 are both going to be speckled. So 2 red, 2 speckled. I think letter A is going to be our answer choice on that one. All right, here's our last one, y'all. So this says, some flowers are controlled by codominance. Red flowers, blue flowers, and speckled flowers. Cross 2 speckled flowers, what is the phenotypic ratio? So very similar to the one previous to this, except for they're both speckled. So they're both going to be heterozygous, which is RB. So let's fill in our Punnett square. Okay, so when you cross 2, sorry, I almost gave you all the wrong information there. And then this one's going to be BB. So y'all, I know I almost just made a mistake there. It just goes to show a lot of times people try to do these Punnett squares in your head. It's super easy to make a mistake even when you're writing it all out. So please always take the time to complete the Punnett squares. Even if you think you can do them in your head, it's super easy to do a mistake, especially when you're working with these different forms of inheritance patterns. Usually you have plenty of time. You know, your tests shouldn't be timed, and usually you've got all the time in the world. So make sure you're going through the effort and actually filling in your Punnett square. And I'm just going to double check this one real quick to make sure I gave y'all the right information. Okay, so I've done this Punnett square correct. It says, what is the phenotypic ratio? So we got 1 that's going to be red, 2 that are going to be speckled, and 1 that's going to be blue. So 1 to 2 to 1. It looks like letter A is going to be our best answer choice. This one's going to be red. These 2 are going to be speckled, and that one's going to be blue. So y'all, you can see how confusing this is getting, and we're adding more types of inheritance patterns when I see y'all next time, okay? So just hang in there. If your teacher has more work for you to do, make sure to give it your best effort so you can get this under your belt. Y'all hang in there, and we're going to clear all this up when I see you next time. I hope everybody has a great day.